you have children? Do you have friends? Do your children have friends? Do you sometimes need to transport more than 5 people without making the extras sit in the boot? Well, for that you will need a 7-seat car.
And if you want an electric 7-seater that isn't a commercial van, well, you have an incredible choice of 2.
Really?
Yeah, unfortunately, just the 2. But more on that in a minute. In the meantime, please do as you're told and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. So unless you want to upgrade to an electric minibus, you've pretty much got the choice of 2. The Mercedes EQB
or the mighty Citroen eBerlingo XL.
Now this surprised us here at electrifying.com, but once you do a little digging, there actually isn't much electric choice for larger families. Yes, there's supposed to be a 7-seat option for the Tesla Model Y, but good luck ordering it. The same goes for the 6 or 7-seat Model X, even at more than 100 grand, because that car is missing in action in the UK.
The VW ID Buzz is getting both a 6 and 7-seat option, but that's not going to arrive for a while. And like we said, after that, you're into Mercedes eVito territory. And that's more luxury airport hotel transfer than school drop-off. The thing about electric cars is that they're really good at space. You basically get this packaging freedom because you don't have to worry about all the plumbing required for diesel and petrol engines. So that's taken out, which means the extra space is available for us, the passenger.
I mean, think about the generous rear legroom you get with most bespoke electric cars, the flat floors, the big boots. So why aren't there more electric 7-seaters on the market?
Well, I don't know. But what I do know is that this Mercedes EQB is basically the only premium option available at the moment, unless you can get your hands on a second-hand Tesla Model X. Now, what are we looking at here? Well, starting price is just over £55,000. It comes with a 66.5 kilowatt-hour battery and a range of 250 miles. So actually, that is pretty decent. I think it looks really good too, although I would say in the black, it slightly reminds me of a hearse.
Inside, it's all very Mercedes. So it's got the usual pair of 10.25-inch screens up front, which kind of form a wall of information in front of you, this side being touchscreen. And then lots of kind of nice materials and great design, although it is a little bit jazzy with all this silver trim. And then there's enough storage, although not a great deal. Plus, in the middle, this little touchpad, which controls the touchscreen as well, with a little sort of heel of your hand rest so that you don't joggle around when you're doing it. It's not massively surprising, but it is very comforting. If you like Mercedes interiors, you're going to like this one.
Now, what you're going to find with the EQB is that it has space and flexibility. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, take a look. You can see 5 seats.
I can say that it definitely has 5 seats here. I can see them.
Excellent. Glad you can count to 5. Can you count to 7? Because here are the extra 2 hiding in the back. And I'm hoping to show you how simple it is to put these seats up.
Okay, so what do you do?
So basically, it's as simple as a little red tag here. I'm going to pull it and pull that up there.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually, sometimes these can be quite stiff and heavy, but it's actually not. It's really easy.
That's quite neat, isn't it? And the headrests just pop up like that. That's pretty good. Now, one thing I did notice when I was playing with this car earlier, it's a slight issue, but it's a competent one. So this central bench is split and slides. So this one side splits 2/3 and this extra seat slides back and forth, which is great. But to get into the back to your extra 2 seats, you pull this tag, and then how do I do that? So then if I slide this forwards, I still don't really get enough room to get my feet in. I mean, look,
it's a gap of literally, what, 2 inches?
I mean, I'm a normal sized human being. And then, like, those seats are pushed quite far forwards. It's not bad once you're in. Come and see.
So let's see if I can just jump in.
You kind of have to
slide in.
And then, like...
Okay.
But then
okay.
you can't shut
quite
that.
cozy.
You can't shut that though, can you? Because it's already been slid forward.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's tight. And I have to say, I think this is probably a 5+2 rather than a full 7-seater, because I wouldn't want to be here for very long.
No, agreed. Which is why I think it's been made for the children in the back.
Yes, and it definitely has, because if you look down here, these seats have all got ISOFIX points. So there's 2 here. And then the outside 2 in the centre row both have ISOFIX as well. So you could possibly have 4 child seats in here.
Yes, or you just put your 2 children in the back and have the adults there. But no, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
This, I think that the back is basically for small humans or young people.
So it's a 5+2 rather than a full 7-seater.
And also it's worth noting that once you've obviously got these 2 seats up, there really is virtually no boot space. I think there's enough room for a small handbag, but you're not going to be putting in loads of...
There's no pram going in
junk
there.
Definitely not. No pushchair.
It's good, but I think it's a little bit smaller than I was hoping for. It's a little bit less space.
It's a 5+2, let's call it that.
But we have an answer for that.
But let's be honest, the EQB is an expensive option if you've got a big family. So let me introduce you to a real space race champion, the Citroen eBerlingo XL, a 45 kilowatt hour battery and only 168 miles of WLTP range, but enough room to throw several parties in the back, and all for under £32,000, which isn't cheap, but it really is quite good value, and it's about the same as some electric super minis.
Okay, so it does look a little bit less upscale than the Mercedes, but that's to be expected. But I think the case could be made to say that the eBerlingo is actually more practical for the kinds of things you're probably going to use it for. All those local school runs, team sports, running around to other schools. It could be that this car is a winner. Nick, what's it like on the inside?
Well, inside it does feel like a bit of a van, and that's probably because it kind of is. It is very pared back. If you look at the dash, I mean, it's very, very simple in here. One good thing is there's lots of space. There's also lots of storage space, although one thing I've noticed is it's all open. So actually, if you use the storage space, I think it's going to feel very cluttered inside. This is obviously a brilliant use of the headspace. However, only really good for books and pieces of A4 paper. I mean, you can't really put anything small in there because when you open that, there's a hole. So all your mints and chewing gum is just going to fall into your lap. But yeah, overall, it does what it needs to do.
Plus, you get sliding doors both sides, and back here is the big deal. It's the second and third rows of seats. So let's play Seat Jenga.
My favourite type of game.
Hi!
Okay. Oh, look at all the space in here.
No, look, I mean,
It's huge.
I'm not exactly worried about wandering around in the back of this, and this is the third row with 2 single seats in it.
Right, okay.
The one thing I wanted to point out though is I am sitting in the third row and I would still have plenty of leg room, so this is quite big. And then the party trick of the eBerlingo is this.
He's been waiting a long time for this.
I like this. Right, let's see if you can do this. If you pull this handle up and fold this forwards, and then you grab this, that rocks up, and then Nicola, if you'd like to pull the red ribbon.
Oh, crikey. Okay. Ah, there we go.
Right, there you go. Now, you can then take that out and leave it in your garage.
Yes.
And what it leaves you is basically options. So you can have this thing as a massive van, or you could have, you know, 3 kids. It's huge, isn't it? Yeah. It's just really, really big.
And also back on the old favourite topic, Isofix. This one, the 2 back seats don't have Isofix. However, 3 in the middle.
Yeah, so you can get a few bits of kid in here.
Exactly.
But I just like the flexibility of it. Obviously, it looks less sexy than the EQB.
Just a tad.
There is a lot of kind of practicality in this boxy shape, especially if you take these 2 back seats out and fold everything flat. I mean, look at that. You could do...
I can already see you're going to be camping in this.
You could do activities. It would be brilliant. I know we take the mickey slightly, but the eBerlingo is actually not that bad once you're out on the road. It rides perfectly acceptably, even when it's unloaded, and the handling, it's safe enough. I mean, it's not a sports car, so you wouldn't really get over enthusiastic with it. Yes, it can get a little bit boomy when you're on a rough surface, and you do feel the bumps a little bit, but the noise thing is because there's so much interior volume, it doesn't get absorbed by anything, and the hard plastics kind of reflect that noise all around the cabin. So as soon as you put a few people in here, nice soft bodies to absorb that kind of noise, it'll probably get a bit better. It's not fast. With a heady 136 brake horsepower, this is probably one of the slowest cars I'm going to test all year, because it gets from 0 to 62 miles an hour, the standard sprint, in 11.5 seconds, which I think I can run faster than. But saying that, if you've got 6 kids and yourself in here coming home from football practice, You don't want neck-snapping acceleration and loads of handling, because you'll then be cleaning that handling off your interior carpets. And this big whole practicality thing, weirdly, because this car is so square, it might be big, but it's oddly easy to park because you can see the ends of it and the sides are very slabby. So when you're doing a parallel park, I found this pretty easy. That's a weird thing to say about a car this size, but genuinely it does work. This one also has a reversing camera, which isn't standard, so that did help a little bit. Other than that, you seem to sit quite upright. There's plenty of headroom, and it does feel a little bit like you're driving a bus, which it kind of is, a minibus. There's nothing wrong with it per se. The steering is very slow, and that's possibly to stop it just falling over when you go around a roundabout. And even though there are drive modes from this rocker switch on the center console, so there's Eco, Normal and Power, Eco just makes it feel like someone shot it full of tranquilizer, and Power doesn't seem that much different from Normal. I'm not sure where the power really would come into play, because I wouldn't want to use any more than it's got. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just possibly the least exciting car in the world. This is for doing a job, not for going for a drive-in.
The EQB, on the other hand, well, this is actually rather lovely. Even though this is a car that was designed with engines in mind, it does actually really suit electric power. It's quiet, it's quite upscale to drive, as you'd expect from Mercedes, and it can handle a corner. It's also got all-wheel drive, so it's a bit more secure on slippery surfaces, and the good news is it's really quite fast. 62 miles per hour from a standing start in just over 6 seconds means you are never going to be late. Well, nearly never. Can't perform miracles, unfortunately. One thing though, even though on these 19-inch wheels the ride can be a tiny bit jumbled, but generally you're going to be looking at the kind of driving experience that you would expect from Mercedes. Secure, serene, and kind of grown up. And I don't think it even feels too big on the road, which is a really nice surprise. The EQB also gets 11 kilowatt AC charging as standard, so it can make use of most local post chargers, with 100 kilowatt DC charging, which honestly is looking a tiny bit average these days. 10 to 80% on a big public rapid charger in 35 minutes is fine, but not jaw-droppingly fast. And you'll be looking at an overnight charge of just under 11 hours on a normal home wall box. One thing we may have noticed though is that Mercedes charging seems to run slightly faster than the quoted figures, so you might even see more than 100 kilowatt charging if you're on a big enough public rapid charger, which is always a nice surprise.
Now, the eBerlingo only has a relatively small battery, so massive charging capability isn't really needed. But 7.4 kilowatt AC with optional 11 kilowatt still feels a tad stingy. But the eBerlingo gets the same 100 kilowatt DC as the Merc, so you're looking at 26 minutes, 10 to 80% on a big enough public charger. Although that's a smaller battery, don't forget, so you're not quite adding as much range, about 80 miles versus the EQB's 120 to 130. Still, that's enough. With a smallish range, the eBerlingo is probably better at local people moving than massive trips. Which is not to say that you can't drive it to the opposite end of the country if you wanted to, you'll just have to do a bit of road trip planning.
I think overall I am still surprised that these are the only two options when it comes to proper 7-seaters here in the UK. But I do like the flexibility, because obviously being a mum of two, the space is great in terms of boot when I have got 5 seats. But if I do need to have the 2 extra seats, then you've got that option, but it doesn't mean I have to have 7 seats all of the time. So actually, the 5+2 is a nice way of doing it.
Yeah, it kind of works. It's quite slick in there though, isn't it? And don't forget that neither of these cars was actually conceived from the outset to be a bespoke electric car. So they don't take full advantage of that electrical architecture. And actually both of them work, which means we do have a little bit of choice, albeit from 2.
I'm going to surprise nobody by saying that the Mercedes EQB is the nicer car, which it should be for the money. All the good bits of a Merc, some extra flexibility, and an electric drivetrain. It's a better bet than either the EQA or the EQC, in my opinion.
And I'm going to argue that the eBerlingo makes more sense. If you're going to commit to needing more space, you can't beat the Berlingo for the cash. Saying that, it would work best on more local routes because of the more limited range, and it isn't the sexiest thing, so I do understand if it's not your bag.
Although I think we'd all rather have a VW ID Buzz with more seats, wouldn't we? But for now, this is what we've got, and they're not bad choices.
Agreed. I think the e-berlingo makes more sense, and ID Buzz isn't cheap.
If you want to know more about the two cars featured or any of their competitors, please do log on to electrifying.com and we'll help you sort through the options. Although good luck finding any other 7-seaters.